Alright guys, we're back again. I said we would do a review on my boat. It's nothing fancy, it's just an old 1988 Shoalwater flats boat. 21 foot. Where to begin? I'd mentioned in the video when I talked about reels and the way that I fished, I mentioned about the boat. First boat I ever bought was a 1997 Dargo Scout 170. That's a 17 foot, actually 16 feet 6 inches to be exact, but they call it 17. Why, I don't know, but it's actually 16 feet 6 inches. And I fished out of that boat. I bought that boat back in 1997, and I fished out of that boat for, well, until I got this boat, which was 2017, 2018, I think, right around there somewhere. So about 20 years, you know. And I caught a lot of fish out of that boat. It was a good boat. It pretty much went everywhere on the bay. I had a few issues. You know, Dargo makes a good boat. The only thing that I didn't like about the Dargo was that the step on the right here, like here. Let me show you on this boat. You see the step right here? On the Dargo, it's up here. You know, so you got to step up high to get onto the front deck. That was one disadvantage. I mean, it made it great when you were fishing at night, and it made a perfect seat to be able to sit on, and I had rod holders right here and rod holders on the other side and rod holders in the center, and I could sit right there, and it was a good thing. But when you were drift fishing and you're having to step up, step down, step up, step down, because the live well on that one was in the back, all the way on one of the pontoons on that Dargo. And you'd have to go all the way to the back to get the bait and then back up to the front. You know, so that was one disadvantage. The second disadvantage that I didn't like about it was, I don't know how to explain it. On a Dargo, I don't know how the new ones are, I can't speak for them, but on that 90s model that I had, that late 90s model, say you're in the water and you're on plane, like you're sitting here, and then you're gonna take off and you're gonna go. You know what I mean? If you watch, like I posted a few videos already of me riding in this boat, when you see that it takes off, it just shoots straight and it goes on plane. Well, the Dargo has to do this. It goes and then it has to go up. Well, it has to go up and over to get on plane. So that was always a disadvantage out there in the flats, because you had to go down, and you're already in shallow water as it is, up, and ride the wave. So whenever I was in real super shallow water, I had to make a wave first to get a wave rolling, and then I rolled up on the wave, and that's how I would take off on that Dargo. This one I don't have to do that with. And how I came about this boat was many years ago, back in the early 80s, well, mid 80s, 84, 85, right in there somewhere, 83, about 84, I think. That's when a friend of my brother's, he bought one of these boats. Exact same boat, 21 foot, except his had that's not the original console that I have on here. I think this thing came off of one of those bay stills. I believe that's what this console is, because I wanted a live well. This boat didn't have a live well in it. Originally it had no live well, and I wanted an easy access live well that was somewhere mid in the boat, to where you didn't have to go all the way to the back, you didn't have to go all the way to the front. It would be a common ground, doesn't matter who's fishing in the front, who's fishing in the back. It's easy access for either fisherman. So The original console here on it, if you would just go straight up, and then would have an ice chest that would sit in front of it, you know, that was strapped to the floor. But this setup here is off of a base stealth. It's a base stealth console. It's just an old base stealth console. That's all it is. With the live well. It has a live well in it. So that's the reason why that part was switched out from a Shoalwater. Shoalwater doesn't make that design. I mean, they may make something similar now with a live well under the seat on their new boats, but back in the day, they didn't make this setup. It was just, it was screwed to the floor, but here it's part of the floor and it's fiberglassed in. So you don't have to worry about any water leaking down in there and rotting out and all that. So it got fiberglassed instead of getting screwed in. Try to use as minimal screws as possible. But anyway, let's get back to the story. So in the 80s, I mentioned about that he had a bass boat originally, is what he had. And I think I said it was a Ranger, but now that I think about it, it was a Cajun. That's what he had. He had a Cajun. And that Cajun boat didn't do too well out there in the flats around Bird Island. You could just barely get in around the back, or not even the back. You could just barely get on the side, and that's about it. And when the engine burned up on that one, that's when he went to go look. And he went up to Port O'Connor, and they were making this boat. I don't remember if his was an 80, I think his was an 84 model, because the design is a little bit different on the 84s than on the 88s. It's exactly the same width-wise, 8 feet wide, you know, the 21 feet long, but the difference would be right here on those. And if you've ever seen pictures of an old Shoalwater, here this deck came out more and it had a flat piece on it up here, like you know, it came out further. The motor sat in further than it does on this 88. That's, other than that, it's the same boat, the same exact hull, other than the back of the transom was inset more. So anyway, he went up there and he got one, and he had it custom made, had it painted to the color of his truck, and put a 175. That was the biggest engine you could get on one of those for a shallow running boat back then. I mean, they made big ones, but I mean with a short shaft on it and all that. At the time, he got one of them Johnson Seahorse 175s. So he'd be the last one putting in down there at the dock, and he'd be the first one out there. He'd beat everybody. He'd shoot by everybody. I mean, that boat was scary. It would fly with a 175 on the back. I mean, it would fly. Real scary. And you know, because like I said, these boats don't have these runners to control them, to keep them going straight. It's just a flat bottom boat. There's nothing under there. You see that? There's nothing. So that's why this boat can draft so shallow and get in so shallow. It doesn't have those runners that keeps it going straight. It'll turn, but it can't turn sharp. It's got to take a wide turn, and if you try to turn sharp, it's going to slide on you. And you know, and then that can get dangerous depending upon how fast you're going. But it's the perfect boat for the flats. I mean, you can just see in the videos the water I fish in. I mean, what's wrong, Cassie? What's up, Bubby Booby? Cassie's out here. She's getting bored. She wants to play, but she's gonna have to wait. Anyway, so it gets in real shallow water. With that motor on the back, on average, you're talking 12 to 14 to get up. But I've done it 8 to 10. I've been in 8 to 10 inches of water, and it has gotten up in that. So, but on average, and usually what I fish in anywhere between 14 to 18 inches, 20 inches, every now and then 24 inches, and every now and then 3 feet. But most of the time when you're back there in the flats, it's anywhere between 18 to 20 inches. And in some spots where the potholes are, they're 24 inches and to 30 inches. But like I say, this isn't anything fancy. It's nothing like what they make nowadays. It's just an old flats boat. There's nothing fancy about it. Got a few little upgrades on it. I got a 4-stroke Mercury 115 on it, but it's an old motor. It's a 2006. So look, the boat has a 1988 model. The trailer is a 2008 model old McLean trailer, which it needs some work too. It's kind of starting to fall apart, so I got some stuff I got to check into. I got to see if it's worth fixing this trailer or if it's just cheaper just to go buy a new one. Because I'm going to need to eventually replace both axles all the way across, because they've had so much salt water. When I got it, the trailer was already had a lot of miles on it. I mean, it still works pretty good, but I need to start thinking about replacement and getting it fixed or whatever, just before it breaks down on me on the side of the road. But it's a 2008 McLean trailer with a 2006 Mercury 4-stroke 115 motor on the back. All I did is I just painted this with Raptor liner. I like the Raptor liner look of it to match the boat, because the paint was already fading on the engine. So, and that's what I painted the console too, because I didn't really like the white console. The white console didn't really go with this gray boat. The black theme is more better. It stands out better than the white. But anyway, let's get back to how I came across a boat like this. So anyway, I'd go out with him because, like I told you guys, I never had a boat until I bought one in '97. I always had to go with somebody that had a boat, and me and my brother would go out with his buddy on his boat, and that's what he had. He had one of these Shoalwaters. But if I remember right, it was an '84 and '85 model. It was one of the first models. They started making them in '84, like mid '84. Is when they first started making these, and this is the boat that put Shoalwater on the map. Before then, Shoalwater wasn't a household name, but this boat here, because it could fish so shallow, is what really made them, put them up there, you know, in the echelons like Dargo, like Shallow Sport, you know, being a Texas flats boat to get out there in the flats. And now you can see the kind of Shoalwaters that they make, because everything now that they make nowadays are cats, they're catamarans. I think you can probably still get a similar model and flats design from them, something, I don't know, you know, scooter style. I've seen them online, but I don't know if they make these big ones like this anymore, flat bottom. They may still, I don't know. But it was a great design for fishing flats. Not for fishing deep water. You know, it's perfect for, it's the perfect flats boat. It's big and it gets real skinny, it gets in skinny water. It got plenty of space on it to move around, and you're not, you know, touching elbows and all that stuff, and you can get in really skinny water with it. But so how it's set up with an old motor guide, trolling motor. So when I get in real super shallow water that you can't use the motor in, the motor on the back, I just tilt it up, and then break out the trolling motor to move around, and that works really well with this. As long as the wind's not blowing 50 miles an hour, it works really well. It's not no speed demon, because that's just like an old, I don't know, 45 pounder, I think. I don't even think it's 50, but it works. It does what I need it to do. Eventually it's going to get replaced with something different. I just haven't decided what I want to put on it, because it is getting old. You know, it's an old one too. It's old and it's used. Pretty much everything on this boat was used. Nothing was new. It's just been refurbished. Is all that it's been done. But it works. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all you need it to do. You just need it to be functional and for it to work. So we can get up in here and take a look. So you guys can see it. Like I say, it's just an old console. Got a ton. I put a ton of gauges on it. Originally it only had 3 gauges, but then I said, nah, I want the tilt, I want the vacuum pressure, I want the temp, I want the oil and the volts. So I loaded up on gauges on it. I mean, you know. But you really only need 3 really to run it. But at least this lets me know, because that motor's so old, because that motor has a lot of miles on it. That motor, I was told only had like 220 hours on it, but I know it's got a lot more than that, because when I took it apart to took the covers off of it to paint them, when I was going to paint them, the whole lower part of the steering arm and pin was completely gone. It had rusted out. So that means that thing had been in the salt water for forever. And then plus, when I first got it, it was overheating. I had overheating issues with it, and it would overheat. I'd go out and it would run fine, and then I'd go out again, and then like maybe, I don't know, 30-40 minutes into the run, it'd start overheating, and I'd have to stop, and then I'd go again and it'd overheat on me again. So that happened right off the bat when I first started running it. So I took the lower end unit off it, and when I opened up to look at the water pump, the water pump had been, like I was told, it had been replaced, which was true. But what they had done is they had left the old lock key in there, and it was caught up, and it had cut into the housing, and it had cut the propellers on the impeller and stuff and everything. It made cuts in them. So I went over to Bass Pro. I bought a whole kit. It was like $250, $260, the whole housing, the impeller, everything. And then I put it on, and it ran fine. It ran fine for a couple of runs, 2 or 3 runs. I was like, okay, man, I'm good to go. And then I noticed my vacuum started dropping off again. It wasn't pumping, and it started overheating. And I'm thinking, okay, what can it be? Because I know it's not that, because I just put that on. That's, you know, it's brand new, and I know how to do it, because I serviced my old Dargo my whole life. The whole life of that boat that I had it, I never took it into a shop. I always did all the servicing. I changed out all the plugs, the wires, the coil packs, the water pump, all that stuff. So it's not like I didn't know how to put one on. So I'm thinking, then, what's the issue? And I got some muriatic acid, so I pulled the lower end unit off it, and then I pulled the thermostat housing off and took the thermostat out, and I dumped muriatic acid down the water jackets. You know, diluted it with water and ran it through there, and diluted it down to see. And in the beginning, when I first did it, nothing came out the bottom. When I first did it, it took like maybe 10 minutes until it started dripping out the bottom where the lower end unit is supposed to be. So right then and there, I knew it had a clog in the water passage system. That it wasn't the water pump. So it had something was clogging it. So I did it a few times, and then it started to where it ran pretty good. Then I'm like, okay, man, so we're good to go. So I put water in it, and let water run forever to clean all the acid out, and then that neutralizer to put down in there to neutralize any acid that might have been residue that might have been left around. So once all that was done, I reassembled it, put it all back together, and then I went out again. And it ran good. It ran good for like 2 or 3 runs, 4 runs, and then like on the 5th or 6th run, boom. It was back again. It was overheating. The pressure was dropping. It wasn't getting any pressure, and it was dropping, and the engine would overheat, and I'd have to stop, let it cool down, and then I could run a little bit, and when it overheat again, I'd stop just to get back in. So once that happened, you know, I had it out here, and then that's when I pulled down. I was decided I was going to repaint the outside of the motor, so I pulled all the covers off it, and then that's when I noticed that the steering pin was completely rotted out at the bottom, where the bottom yoke is, and where it holds, and it's got the bottom engine mount. All that was loose. I mean, it was gone. It was completely gone. So that let me know right then and there. I knew that motor had been sitting in salt water for a long time. So I looked around, and this motor's so old, they don't make it new anymore. You can't buy the steering pin and arm. You can't get it. They don't make it. So I looked online, and I found a boat yard up in, I forget the place in Illinois, on a lake out in Illinois. It was a salvage boat yard where they sold used parts, and they had the exact same engine that I had, and they had one on it, and it had only been ran in fresh water. The motor was blown, but the pin was on it when they shot me the pictures and emailed them back to me. And then I told them that I'm game, so I had to put a deposit down for them to get their mechanic to take it apart, so I could get a better picture, so they could shoot better pictures of it for me, and then send me better pictures so I could see the whole thing, to make sure that there's no pitting on the arm, there's no rust, it's not rusted out, and like I say, mainly no pitting, because once the arm starts to pit, then the metal just deteriorates from there, especially out in the salt water. The salt water, it's just devastating on your boat, especially on metal objects. And once they did that and they took it apart, it looked brand new. And so they were right. It had never been ran in salt water. It had been run in whatever lake up there that they had, wherever it came from. And I paid for it. I think I paid, I want to say $200, $179. I think it was 179 bucks. If I could get that pin brand new, it would have been $1,000, but they didn't make it anymore. Like $800 plus tax and shipping and all that stuff to get it here. And as a matter of fact, it was pretty interesting. Let me just tell you this. I need to back up a little bit. I went to Bass Pro when I first saw that, because you know there's a Mercury dealer over here, so they deal in Mercury. So I went to their shop over there, and that's what I told them, that hey, so what do you guys charge to put in a steering arm and pin, you know, on a motor? And he said, oh, about $7,000 is what we charge, but we've never done one, because usually when it gets to that point that the steering pin and arm is rusted out, they just replace the motor, you know. But that's what they charge, and that's been, I don't know, about 3 years ago was when I started having the issue. 3-4 years ago, right after I got the boat running and going. But yeah, that kind of let the wind out of my sail when he told me how much that was. But then when I started looking around, I found that I could find it, and then I just took it apart. I just took it out here to the tree in the backyard and separated it, dropped the lower unit and took the power head off it, and then disassembled the midsection. And I had to use a grinder because all the bolts were so rusted, you couldn't get them out. They were corroded and rusted, so I just grinded all the heads off them and took it out that way. And bought all brand new bolts. I think I spent about $700 on just the parts, buying all the new bolts, all the new engine mounts, all the new gaskets, because I took the engine apart, so I had to buy all new oil pan gasket. I had to buy the new screen for the oil pickup, and let me tell you the reason why I had to take the whole engine apart. Because when I started separating it out to fix the steering pin on it, when I looked up in the water jackets, all of the water jackets in that motor were completely clogged with oyster shells. There was no water could pass, and that's why it was overheating. All the little tunnels and lines that it has in the midsection of the engine was just full of oyster shell. So whoever had owned it before had ran it, you know, and in areas, I guess, of the water where there's a lot of oyster beds, and it had sucked it up through the water pump and into the water jackets, and it didn't it clogged everything up, and it didn't pass. It wouldn't pass through, and that was the issue with the overheating on this engine. I got in there with a pick. I separated everything out. I got in there and I blew it out, and I used a pick, and I picked all through it and cleaned all the jackets out of it. And it took a while to do it, but once I got it done, I assembled it back, and I haven't had an issue out of this motor since. Not overheating wise. The only issue that I had was when I broke down in Redfish Bay, but that wasn't because of the motor. That's because the drop tube in the gas tank broke off and fell down, and I couldn't suck up any gas, which I didn't know at the time. I knew it was a fuel delivery problem when I was out there, but I didn't know the reason why it wasn't picking up any fuel, why the motor wasn't getting any fuel. But that's what had happened in that video. The pickup tube had just broken off and it fell in the bottom of the gas tank, and I couldn't get any gas. So you're definitely not going to go anywhere if you can't get any gas to the engine. But anyway, like as you can see, there's plenty of space on this boat. That's what I like about it. And the casting deck, what I like, it's not tall. It's easy to step up onto. So, and the live well works out great since it's in the middle. It's right here, so it's easy whether you're fishing the front or the back. It's easy to get to. The switches that I got here, like I say, this is just an old shifter. It wasn't new. Nothing was new on this boat. Everything's used. It was just refurbished and reused. This doesn't work anymore. I bought this off of eBay because I thought it looked cool because it would match my green lights, because I got green lights here and then I got green lights on the boat. Let me see where they're at. I forget what switch it is. It's one of these right here. So you see how I have green lights on the boat? I have two there that light up the boat so you can see what you're doing at night, and then I got two here on the console here too, so you can see what you're doing at night. And I used to have a light bar here and a sound bar. I took those off. They were a pain in the ass. So I mean, the light bar never really worked well shining out in the distance. It needs to be up and it needs to be high, so that never really worked well for me. It always was just, it cast a shadow off the deck. So I 86 that. And the sound bar, whenever you were going, the wind, when it would be blowing through it, it'd make such a loud sound, so I got rid of that. It had a windshield on it. The windshield was always in the way. I don't like windshield. I like it open so I can see everything. The grab bar, it had a big grab bar on it, and I still have it. I have it over there. The only reason why I took the grab bar off is because every now and then I put in over at the fingers down there at the Pompano Park at Port Isabel, and I like to, instead of going all the way out and around and under the causeway to get to South Bay, I like just cutting right across there at that little bridge that crosses by Quick Stop on Highway 100. Well, the bar was too high. I couldn't get under the bridge. So once I took that bar off, I can pass through there no problem, back and forth. That's the only reason why I took the bar off, is because so I can get under the bridge over there at Highway 100 with this boat. And it works beautifully now. Well, once I did that, because I couldn't get under there before, because the bar was just too high, because that bridge sits real low and when you're going under it, and that's the only reason why I don't have a grab bar on it. If I can find a shorter one to mount, I would, but I just haven't seen one that would fit this configuration. You know, I can probably go have one made, but I mean, I don't really need it. It would be in the way anyway when I'm casting. I like the open space. I like it open. So when I'm casting wherever, there's no obstruction in my way. I try to keep the poles on the back of the boat. I don't really like to use the leave poles in here while I'm riding. That's the only time that happens, is when I have somebody else on the boat. But other than that, it stays in the back. The only downside that I don't like is with this console is I can't fit a big gas tank under there. I'm trying to figure out how to get a bigger gas tank, because it only has a 19-gallon gas tank, and that does fine. I mean, I can put it in Arroyo City, go to the island and back, and still have a quarter of a tank of gas. Or I can go up to Port Mansfield and back and still have, you know, half a tank of gas. But where it becomes an issue is I can't put in at Arroyo City, because in my old Dargo, I used to put it in Arroyo City and I used to go to the land cut. And that had a 34-gallon gas tank on it. and I could go all the way up there and back to Arroyo City and pick up, instead of having to put in at Port Mansfield. I don't like putting in at Port Mansfield. I've been broke down twice on the water. Once in this boat, and I put in at Port Mansfield, and then once in a boat that I borrowed from a friend of mine, and it was the same thing. I put in at Port Mansfield and it broke down. So you know, just call me superstitious. And I don't like the bay. That's the roughest bay going across there, Redfish Bay. I don't like that bay. It's rougher than the Padre Island Bay. I would rather just put in at Arroyo City and shoot out, catch the flats, and ride the flats all the way to the land cut, where you don't have any issues. It's nice and smooth ride. So I just need to kind of figure out. I've been looking at a tank that's 29 gallons. I got to get some more measurements, and I'm thinking a 29 gallon would be perfect. That would get me up to the land cut to cruise around and then come all the way back, docking it off out of Arroyo City and not having to put in at Port Mansfield, and still be able to fish up north. That way I can make videos up there too. But this is what it is. It's just a simple flats boat. It's got 3 batteries on it. The trolling batteries right here in this setup right there. It's an old battery. I've had it for a long time. That Genus whatever that is, Nico Genus slow charger that keeps your battery maintainer, it never worked. It's not, it's supposed to be, it's good, but it didn't work well. It would charge one battery and leave the other one uncharged, even though it's a 2-bank charger. Only one bank would ever fully get charged and the other one wouldn't. So I just disconnected it. I was thinking about 3-bank chargers, but I bought these things. I got 3 of these and they work badass. And this keeps the batteries maintained. You can see how old that battery is, and it still works great. I just put that little whatever that is, 2 amp 3 amp charger on it, and it keeps it maintained. The batteries in the back of the boat, I bought them, I don't know, about 4 years ago, and they're just a cheap Duracell battery from whatchamacallit, from Sam's Club. 75 bucks each. It's all that I paid for those batteries. And I use this maintainer, these little amp maintainers on them, and I haven't had an issue out of these batteries. I originally had 2 batteries. I had one in here and one in the front, and then I noticed that it had run down, so I added a second one and just put it in line, and I've never had an issue out of it since I've done that. It's performed well. Always started, no problems. What else? I don't know what else to tell you, man, other than it's just an old 1988 flats boat. But I can get back to the story about the reason why I picked this boat was because my brother's friend had one just like this. And when we went out, it could pretty much go anywhere. And it left an impression on me. Like, you know, I always thought that, hey, I want a boat like that one of these days that can pretty much fish anywhere on the Laguna Madre. And that's what he did. He pretty much fished anywhere on the Laguna Madre with it. And it just stuck with me. And I looked for years, and a few had come up, and I had missed opportunities on 2, and this was the 3rd one that had come up, and I finally got this one eventually. But they're excellent flats boats. I mean, they're not the smoothest riding boat in the world. I mean, they're a rough ride because, I mean, it's a flat bottom boat. So you're not going to get a smooth ride like these new modern boats. Like I say, it's not a new modern boat, but the beauty about it is this boat's paid for. I own it outright. You know, I don't have no $700,000-$800,000 payment a month to be paying on it. You know, and if, you know, something happens to it, it can get replaced because everything here is refurbished. So it's not like I got, you know, I do have some money, you know, I got $16,000 in it, but compared to a new boat that costs you, you know, anywhere upwards from $50,000 to $100,000, depending upon how you outfit it and outrig it, I think I came out pretty good. And it does what I need it to do. And at the end of the day, that's what you need. You just need a boat that does what you need it to do. You know, it's like a car. You have to, what suits you, you have to get a boat that fits you. These are excellent. I mean, I love this boat. I love how it can get in so shallow water with ease, no problem, man. And just because it's the fishability off of it, it's real easy to fish, plenty of room. I don't stumble and fall over anything like I did on the Dargo because it was such a tight fit because it was a narrow boat. I love how it's 8 feet wide. And it's got a massive tunnel underneath it. I mean, like a 4-foot wide tunnel. My Dargo had a tunnel, but it was narrower. I think it was only 2 feet. I think it was 24 inches. And you know, and Dargo has that modified V hull. That's their signature on the front of their boats. I don't know if they still put them on well, I don't even know if they make those boats, because I think everything now is cat boats. They still may make the Scout Series. I don't think the Scout Series is pontoon. I think that's a different model that they make. I still think they make the Scouts. So that modified V hull, that was one thing that was good about the Dargo. I will tell you that. That modified V hull on the front will cut the water real nice for you whenever you get a good chop going and you're hitting it and you're going. It'll split that water. So it was a good boat. It just had a little bit of issues about getting up in super skinny water. But other than that, overall, I pretty much got up everywhere I needed to go. And I really don't have any complaints. It never left me out there. I never had an issue with that boat. This boat has broke down once on me so far. But that Dargo, in the 20 years that I owned it, it never left me out there. Always started and always brought me back, took me out and brought me back, no issues. I don't know what else to tell you guys. So like I say, on boats, it's a matter of preference too. It's just like fishing, matter of preference. You need a boat that suits your needs. Some people need those new modern boats. You know, they like that luxury, riding out there in style, I guess. I don't know. But you know what I mean? It's not saying anything bad. It's just that you just need to get a boat that suits your needs. And this is all I need that suits my needs to go out there and fish. And it does the job perfectly. Like I say, they're not the smoothest riding boats in the world, but they do get shallow. They get extremely shallow. And I got that Baystar hydraulics on it, but it's still hard to crank because, like I say, I always run with the jack plate up. When I run, that's how I run all the time. I run like that all the time. I'm not, like I say, in the videos it looks like I'm going fast. I'm not going fast. This boat isn't speeding along. It doesn't go that fast. It's just a matter of perception because of the video. But that's how I always run. I leave it right there. And I have one of those stiffy. Let me get down there and we'll take a look at it for you so you can see it. And that way I can show you guys the tunnel. Of course, I'm always rambling. I keep rambling, and so I got this stiffy plate. I think I bought it out of Corpus on my old Dargo. First, we made one. My brother made one out of aluminum because he worked for a sign company, and we drilled holes in the lower unit, and we bolted it down, and it was big. It was a big one. On that Dargo, a big aluminum one is what he made, and that worked pretty good in the beginning. It would retain a lot of water. Well, here, let me pick this up so we can see. So that one was huge. It would retain a lot of water because it was big, and the sides came down, I mean, just barely clearing the prop. It was badass until we got caught in some really heavy swells out there south of 3 islands, between the island and heading back from the, you know, in that big bay where the swells get really big. It bent that aluminum plate, and I had to take it off in the water out there because it was hitting the prop. And then I went to fiberglass, which is same as this one, but when I went to a fiberglass one on that Dargle, and that's what it finished off with, was a fiberglass one like this. But the Stiffy guys, they make this one, oh, look, I got some grass, and it just sandwiches on there, and you don't have to drill in there. And you can see I've already lost a bolt right here somewhere. So I was just looking at that. I saw a hole here somewhere. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, down there. I've already lost one. But it's a great plate. It's worked well. It keeps the water right there where you need it. When I was telling you about my boat ventures, when I broke down, I borrowed back in the early 90s, I borrowed a tri-hull. It was a 1972 Intruder tri-hull, and I put it in at Port Mansfield with it from a friend of mine from his dad. And we went out in it, and we went to the East Cut, you know, to the jetties there. And when we shot out there, the cotter pin, and that old, it was an old Evinrude motor. I think it was a 70 horsepower Evinrude. The cotter pin here came off, and this rotated out, and it slung the prop. And we didn't go anywhere. Nobody stopped to pick us up or anything, so we just drifted back basically from the jetties back to Port Mansfield. All day fishing. Caught a lot of drum, caught a lot of reds, caught a few trout, caught a lot of drum that day. And I drifted ashore about 2 miles south of Port Mansfield, and then I walked over up there walked and picked up my truck. And I was lucky that that trailer that tri-hull was on had a breakable trailer. It broke in the middle. So I just took it down there where we were, backed it off into the water, broke it open, and we pulled it all the way up into there, and we ratcheted it up on it and took off. Yeah, my 2 experiences putting in at Port Mansfield, both times broke down. But yeah, it slung off, the cotter pin. And then when I took it back, I had to buy the prop. I forget, the prop was expensive back then, and it was a 3 blade. It wasn't a 4 blade. This thing works beautiful, 4 blade props, and it does have a cup. There used to be a guy down there and on Garcia Street in Port, I forget his name. I'm sure he's been long gone. But he would weld the bead on my props, and they lasted forever. Because, you know, when you're in the shallow, you need to cup water. If you can't cup water, you're not going to get up. I don't care if you got a shallow running boat. If you don't have a cup on it here, it's not going to chop enough water to get you up. And this extra blade helps it even chop more water when you put a 4 blade on it. But by putting a 4 blade on it, you lose speed. You lose top end speed. By cupping it, you lose top end speed. So it's a trade-off. Like I say, everything is a trade-off when you're fishing the flats. You always got to remember that. You got to decide, okay, what do I want? Do I want performance, or do I want to get up in shallow water? So it's always a trade-off. But it's worked well. I love this 4 blade because my old one only had a 3 blade on it, and I'd have to put a super huge weld bead. I'd have this guy welded on there, and to last, because, you know, they used to roll them too. They used to take them, and they had a rolling machine, and they'd roll it and fold it over, but that wouldn't last any time. 2 or 3 runs out to the sand flats, and it'd be straight and flat again, man. But the welded ones work pretty good, you know. But yeah. So let me show you the tunnel, guys. You can see this thing has a massive tunnel on it. Look at that big old tunnel under there. Huge tunnel. That thing's like almost 4 feet wide, man. Just right under 4 feet. I think it's 42 inches. You know. So that's why it works so well. If you notice, it starts low and then it comes up. And that's how it pushes the water through to get it where you need to get you planed. You know, that's, like I say, that's what makes it such a good flats boat. This big tunnel that's underneath it back here, you know, and of course the jack plate that goes with it. Helped. And then of course the 20 inch lower unit on it. So I don't know what else to tell you other than it's an excellent flats boat. Alright guys, I guess me and Cassie are going to sign it off. We got a video that we're posting right now that we're waiting, that's uploading. We went out on Thanksgiving and we caught a nice gator trout, so it's going to be a gator trout video. So that should be posting sometime tonight, and then we'll get back at it again, and we'll see you out there on the water on the Lower Laguna Madre. Y'all have a good day.